Just a little over a month ago, we took a 1,000-mile road trip in our new Ford F-150 Lightning extended range. This Lariat truck is amazing, and I made a whole video about how long that trip took, how many times we had to stop and charge, how much the total cost was. Lots of stuff in that video if you're interested in a 1,000-mile road trip in a Ford F-150 Lightning. Well, I'm making that 1,000-mile trip again, but this time I'm leaving the Lightning here at home because I'm taking the F350, and we're gonna do the same type of thing, figure out exactly how long it takes, exactly how much I spend on fuel, and then we'll be able to do a comparison, the F350 compared to the Ford Lightning, and see which was my favorite 1,000-mile road trip vehicle, all things considered. So new to the channel this year is our F150 Lightning. And for going on 4 years now, this is our F350 crew cab, long bed, 7.3 Godzilla, gas engined 1-ton truck. Now, I've made quite a few long distance trips in the F350 towing the camper, and we've done some videos about that, what it's like to tow a 12,500 pound camper across different areas of the country using the F350. But this trip, I'm not towing anything. I'm just making this a road trip vehicle, and we're gonna do a comparison of cost and time. Now, the F350 has a massive gas tank, stock from the factory, because it's got the 8-foot bed. So the advantage there is I can go 550, 600 miles without having to stop for fuel. We'll talk about that throughout the video. We'll talk about the ride quality. We'll talk about driving a big long bed crew cab truck through the city of Chicago compared to driving the F-150. We'll talk about parking. We'll talk about all kinds of stuff as we get on this trip. Okay, so I just reset the trip one. It's gonna start counting time. It does have our distance to empty, but we need to top off with fuel on our trip, and then it'll keep track of our total distance traveled, total time traveled, and our miles per gallon. You can see we're starting out at 43,273.7 miles, and I will keep you posted along the way on this 1,000-mile adventure in our F350. Just a quick update here. We are about 2 miles shy of entering into Ohio. So we've been traveling now for about an hour and 11 minutes. We've gone 55 miles. Our average miles per gallon is 15.6. Again, we're in a 1-ton truck, so that's not horrible. Interstate speeds. Just like we did in the F150 Lightning video, we will be traveling the speed limit on this trip. So if it's work zone speed limit 60, that's how fast we'll be going, like we are right now. If it's speed limit 70, that's how fast we'll be going, unless we run into traffic. But we will not exceed the speed limit on this trip, just to make it a fair comparison to when we were in the Lightning. A couple quick observations though. Loading the suitcase in the back of the F350, you notice that height difference. Lifting the suitcase up into the back of this was a lot higher. It felt heavier than lifting up in the back of the F-150. And then also, it's kind of nice to be sitting higher when you're traveling along the road here with all the semi-trucks. The F-150 certainly sits higher than a car, but the F-350 sits higher than the F-150. These kind of things that I'm going to talk about next have nothing to do with gas versus electricity or F350 versus F150. This is more just a newer vehicle, trim level type difference, but let's take a look at a couple things here and let me talk to you about some differences I've noticed just in the first hour. So that's one difference. You get used to having the automatic HVAC controls. I found myself constantly adjusting the fan speed, adjusting the temperature. So those are all things that I'm having to tweak as I get a little bit too warm or a little bit too cold. Just passed into Ohio. So in this massive 48-gallon fuel tank, we are just down to about 3/4 of a tank. I guess we're still above. There's still space in between the needle and the 3/4 mark. And then there's our stats. On this trip, we've gone an hour and 13 minutes, 58.4 miles. And we're averaging 15.8 miles per gallon, 441 miles to empty. You can see I do have the cruise set at 70 miles an hour. I definitely miss the blue cruise, not available in this XLT F350. That's one nice thing about having the Lightning, but one nice thing about the F350, much bigger side mirrors. You've got the top mirror with the blind spot monitor warnings and the bottom blind spot mirror, so really great visibility to the sides of the vehicle when you're changing lanes and making those transitions on the interstate here and just traveling with traffic. I do like using in the F350 Waze a lot better than Apple Maps. I use Apple Maps in the F150 Lightning because it shows me how much my state of charge currently is and how much charge I'll have left when I get to my destination and where to stop and charge and how long to charge. So that's really helpful on the Apple Maps when you're in an EV. But in the F350 I prefer to use Waze. I've got it set with this screen where it shows you the map and your next turn and what you're listening to. I like that setup, but you can press any one of those sections and make that fill up the whole screen. The screen is much smaller than we're used to in the F150 Lightning Lariat, where that screen is that massive 15-inch display. But this little one does just fine. I did top off with fuel here at the cheaper gas in Ohio. I think I paid $2.30 something a gallon, whereas at home it's like $3.40 or $3.50 a gallon. Got a Silverado EV coming up on us here. Okay, getting off here at the rest area.
Stay to the left.
You can see there are Tesla superchargers. I think I may have actually stopped at this one before and charged. But I don't need to do any charging in the F350. Just need to stop and use the restroom real quick. Let's do a quick look at where we are here as far as our stats. Been driving for 3 hours and 43 minutes, 213.5 miles, and we're averaging 17.6 miles per gallon. That's pretty good. And after that top off, we are still at 659 miles to empty. There you can kind of see the advantage of that huge 48-gallon fuel tank. We can go a long ways without stopping. Unfortunately, I can't drink bottles of water for 3 hours straight and go a long ways without stopping. Well, it's the next morning, stayed overnight in the hotel just like we did in the F150, except we went a little bit further with the F350. You can see a lot of dew or frost this morning, so I'm letting the truck defrost and warm up a little bit. Let's see what our total drive was yesterday. A little bit of V8 rumble with the cold start this morning. So yesterday's drive, we ended up at 6 hours, 13 minutes, 355 miles, average 17.4 miles per gallon. That's pretty good. We have 466 miles to empty, but we will stop somewhere before we get to the city of Chicago and top it off because it's much harder with a big long truck like this to find somewhere to fill up with fuel in the Chicago area. Most of those gas stations are not like we'd see in Northwest Pennsylvania, where there's huge parking areas and lots of room for trucks and trailers. In the city or the suburbs around Chicago, it's much tighter quarters, so there's not a ton of room for a long bed crew cab truck like this one. So we'll top off before we get there so that we can go all week long, hopefully without having to fill up. Just stopped and filled up with gas. Spent $69.51, $3.19 a gallon for 21.7 gallons. Our new range is 704 miles. We're down to 17.1 though because we're starting to get into more traffic as we approach the city. Getting closer, there's the first view of the Chicago skyline. Chicago Skyway, $7.80 is the cheapest. right, don't know what's going on there. Okay, first leg of the drive done. 8 hours, 17 minutes, 472.7 miles. We averaged 17.2 miles per gallon. So it's Thursday night after work on the start of my drive back towards home. And this is what traffic looks like on a Thursday night at about 6 p.m. See, we're just crawling along here, but you can see the skyline of Chicago up ahead there. Traffic's moving on average 5 to 10 miles an hour maximum, but sometimes we're just sitting still too. My fuel situation is I've got just over 3/4 of a tank, so we will be able to get easily through the downtown of Chicago and on our way across the Indiana Turnpike and into Ohio before we need to stop for gasoline. But I might stop somewhere and grab some food. This is what like 14 lanes of traffic looks like. Lots of brake lights ahead, but we are getting a little bit closer to the city, making a little bit of progress. So it's about 6:48, and you can see how the city driving and the driving during the week really pulled my average down. So our total trip so far, 560 miles, 13 hours of drive time, and our average fuel economy is 15.8. Now that we're back on the interstate, that should pull back up over the next 340-ish miles, but we'll see where we are when we get to the hotel tonight. Well, it's Friday morning. I got 5-ish hours of sleep last night at the hotel. Up in the morning here and on the rest of my trek home, I've got about 4 hours and 15 minutes or so left on the drive. But while we're here in Ohio and gas is cheaper in Ohio than it is in Pennsylvania, or some people call it Taxylvania, go ahead and get some gasoline for $2.79 a gallon. We were at just below half a tank, so we'll see how much it costs to fill the truck back up from half a tank. We made a video in the past about the advantages and disadvantages of having a long bed truck. There's a lot of each. The advantage and disadvantage in the same point is the 48-gallon gas tank. Awesome that you can get some really cool range. I took a picture earlier this trip of the gauge showing we had 700 miles of range, but the downside is it costs a lot to fill it up. So remember, we were about half a tank. For 23 gallons, $66.03. Maybe give it just one little tap here to make sure we're topped off. Okay, that should be good. $66.88. For those of you that don't know, your Ford Super Duty has this little holder for the cap so that the cap's not down here scraping along the paint. Starting out the day here with 44,015 miles. Our average is 15.9, and on this trip so far we have 741.4 miles in 16 hours and 11 minutes. There we are. 707 miles to empty from full. Okay, so we are about 45 minutes from home. Currently 11:35 in the morning. We'll get home just before 12:30, just in the middle of lunchtime. So far we have gone 955 miles in 19 hours and 41 minutes on this trip, averaging now 16.1. So our average has come up a little bit since being in downtown Chicago. Spending more time on the highway has pulled the average mile per gallon up. 16.1, I think it's pretty respectable for a 1-ton truck, V8 engine that spent part of the week in the city and in city traffic, and then the other part of the week at 70 miles an hour on the interstate, with the caveat that there has been a ton of road construction. A lot of times where, and it kind of cracks me up, you'll be going 70 miles an hour is the speed limit, then all of a sudden there's construction, it's 50 mile an hour zone, you get out of the long strip of construction and it's back up to 70 and you're excited to be going, making some headway again, and 2 miles down the road another construction zone that's 50 miles an hour. So sometimes I wonder how they set those zones up where it's just a small gap in between two big long construction zones. It seems like you might as well just leave it all a construction zone. But the other nice thing about a fall trip like this is the scenery is beautiful. The leaves have started to change. It's actually, depending on the elevation, as you drive along, you'll see some leaves that are just starting to change, some leaves that are in the middle of changing colors, and some leaves like here in Northwest Pennsylvania that kind of already had their vibrant, brilliant color stage, and now they are at the darker, browns and burnt oranges. So kind of cool to see that as you drive along. Makes the trip interesting for the scenery. I will say again, it's really nice to be on the interstate in a truck. So both this F350 and the F150 Lightning are just a nice, bigger, secure vehicle to be traveling with so much traffic on the interstate and the turnpikes. The Lightning is definitely a little bit more comfortable ride, but the F350 is still pretty comfortable. I'd much rather be in this than a car traveling on a 1,000 mile trip through the cities and on the interstate. So I'll keep you posted. We are not far from home. We'll be at that 1,000 mile mark, or maybe a little bit over, by the time we get home, and then I'll give you the update. So I got home just in the middle of lunchtime, went inside and worked the rest of the day, but now we're after the work day. Wanted to show you the stats on the screen and then talk a little bit about the comparison of the F150 Lightning, making that 1,000 mile trip, and the F350 Super Duty with the V8 Godzilla 7.3 engine, making the same trip. So here's our display. Total time, 20 hours, 50 minutes, 1,006.9 miles, and average 16.1 miles per gallon. So I went back and watched the 1,000 mile video with the F150 Lightning so I could remember exactly what we had for results in that drive, and I'll put the link to that video up above. If you haven't watched that one, it's pretty interesting. 1,000 miles with an EV truck traveling from Pennsylvania up to above Chicago and then back. So we just made that trip in this truck. We stopped along the way on Sunday night, just like we did on the way with the Lightning. And then we stopped on the way home at the hotel partway through, just like we did with the Lightning. And so the Lightning, when we went there, it cost a total of $59.08 to charge for our 1,000 mile trip. Now remember, we got free charging at the hotel, both there and back, so that certainly helps out. But the total drive time, including charging, was 22 hours and 38 minutes. That was with the F150 Lightning. With the F350, not having to stop and charge, our total drive time was 20 hours and 50 minutes, so over an hour faster, just because we weren't looking for places to charge and spending time charging. But our total fuel costs were $207.06. So the Lightning was quite a bit less expensive for the drive. When I stopped at the hotel on the way to work and the way back from work with the F350, they didn't fill up my truck for free with fuel like they did fill up the Lightning with electricity. So that's one cool difference about driving an EV truck, is that some places will let you fill up for free if you're staying overnight there. And that's a cool thing that just kind of shocks the way we look at our perspective from driving a gas vehicle for many years. So there you go. That's actually $207. I didn't think was too bad considering a 1,000 mile drive. Like I said, we averaged 16.1 miles per gallon. So not bad there. And the F350 did a great job. It still has under 50,000 miles on it. And we're still glad that we made the switch from the diesel to the gas engine. I'll put the video link up above and down below in the description that explains why after 17 years we switched from the Power Stroke diesel in a 1-ton truck to the big V8 in a 1-ton truck. Thanks for watching. If you found this video informative and entertaining, please click the thumbs up button, click that hype button, leave a comment down below, share this with a friend, and hopefully we'll see you again the next time. So I only run these Goodyear Wrangler tires in the summer, and the tread's still fine for summertime. That wouldn't be good enough for winter around here where we have lake effect snow. We did catch some bugs on the front just like we did with the Lightning, but probably not quite as bad. Here, this tire, you can see these little grooves that go across the blocks are pretty worn down. We're almost flat right there. As far as wear though, they've held up pretty well. You know, no weird cupping, no edge wear. And these tires, if we look at the born on date, were made the 5th week of 2020, so they're 5 years plus old now, and you can see they are getting some little cracks and crevices and then some kind of chipping in some areas along the tread here. But overall, those tires have done really well. I put the General Grabber Arctic tires on for wintertime, and they're studded tires. I've done videos about those in the past, but probably next summer, especially if I keep making these 1,000 mile trips with this truck, we'll want to get some new summer tires on here, which will not be inexpensive. And while I had the F350 in on the 1,000 mile trip, Jennifer had the Lightning here taking it to and from work.